Well, here we are. We're continuing on with hormones. I call this endocrine 17. The tissue we're going to talk about is the uterus. Okay, and I'm going to make it particular to the mare's uterus. That's, one of our focus animals, dogs, cats, and horses. And of course, the stallion doesn't have a uterus, but the mare does. And I want to make sure that I explain a couple words here. When we talk about the equine uterus, that's the mare's uterus, right? Equine meaning horse. The equine uterus, it makes a hormone we're going to talk about when it's non-gravid. Non-gravid means not pregnant, okay? When the animal is pregnant, you could say it's gravid. And that uterus doesn't produce this hormone that I'm going to talk about. So gravid is pregnant. I'll put it right there. So got to make sure you understand that. Well, so here it is. Here's my little depiction. We're going to talk about this mare's uterus and every other horse uterus. It's going to be in a non-gravid state to make this hormone. And this little guy here is probably saying, come on, Mom, get up. Let's go play. So, like I usually do with endocrine tissue, I'm going to show you the in situ location of the uterus. Probably not news to anybody, but we're looking at a side view here, a lateral view. This is cranial, of course, caudal, right? So this is the right side of the animal, and they're pointing to the right uterine horn. You should know that on the other side, there's a left uterine horn, although we can't see it. So that tells you right away there's a left and a right side to the reproductive tract. It's very symmetrical down the midline. What you see on the left side is also like a mirror image on the right side. Then we know that we have two ovaries. You should know in the horse, they only ovulate one egg whenever they're in estrus. So the right ovary might be working or the left, but not both. We've talked about this in the past. Twins and more are not good for horses. They like single fetuses in that uterus. Okay, so let me get that up here and bring in another diagram that's a little fuzzy, but I enlarged it, and I'll even enlarge it a little more because I can point out some things here. It's like a bird's eye view of the uterus. So we're flying over the backbone and looking down at the uterus. So in this case, this is right, this is left. They don't have it labeled there. And of course, the only thing we see outside of the reproductive tract is the vulva. And when we go talk about reproduction, we'll be talking about all these parts. But I just want to say there are uterine horns, like this is the right uterine horn, the left uterine horn, like was labeled in the other diagram. Where the two come together, it's often called the uterine body. Okay. Now, we'll do a little histology. This is a cut section through a uterus, and it's got 3 layers of tissues named. So I want to do that. Starting in the outermost layer, the very shiny outside layer that you see if you happen to see a uterus at surgery or something, they're calling it the perimetrium here. Well, yeah, I guess that's an okay term. Here's a term that I also use, the tunica serosa uteri, or sometimes people will just call it the serosa. Serosa is kind of a general term for the outer layer of some of the abdominal organs, like there's the serosa around the intestinal tract. Okay, so the perimetrium, para means around, P-E-R-I. The mitra is really using this prefix in the way I've got it written here. Whenever you see mitra, mitro, that actually refers to the uterus. So remember that. Then as we're going inside the uterus, we come to the myometrium, which is like basically this layer here. If you remember right, myo means muscle. So this is the muscle layer of the uterus. Okay. tends to be more out away from the lumen. And then we have the endometrium. Endo is a prefix that means within, so it tends to be the endometrium. And then the open area here, maybe what I should do is spell it out for you because that might be nice. A lumen. And it ends up being, a lumen can be found any place. It's like, the definition of a lumen is the open area of almost any tissue. So blood vessels have a lumen, all kinds of tubular structures. There's the lumen in the bladder. Here's the lumen. And this would be where the fetus is. In a case, if we're talking about only mare, then this would be where the fetus develops. Okay, now let's talk about the hormone. And I'm only going to talk about one that's made by the uterus. Got to remember now, I'm talking about a non-gravid uterus. And the hormone is called prostaglandin. I'm going to give you a little more longer name for it. But prostaglandin, as depicted in this diagram, is made by a non-pregnant uterus. It doesn't go through air to the ovary. This is depicting the ovary. It goes by a blood and supply, and I'll show you that in here in a little bit. But it causes the CL to regress or lyses. So the take-home message from this diagram is prostaglandin from the uterus lyses the corpus luteum. And for the mare, then that brings her back into estrus in a few days if she's in the breeding season. You got to remember, horses are seasonal, and if this is the last estrus cycle of the season, then she'll be just what we call static for the rest of the time until she becomes seasonal again. So here's another diagram that is much better and has a lot more words. And of course, you can always pause things. But the hormone is prostaglandin F2 alpha. Okay, and prostaglandin has the acronym PG. So let me put that up here maybe. PG. So you could say PGF2 alpha. Okay? And the non-gravid horn makes it by the endometrium. Remember, we showed you where that is. So prostaglandin F2 alpha made in the non-gravid uterus by the endometrium. It is carried out of the uterus by the uterine vein. So blood is flowing this way. They did a good job. Veins are usually depicted as blue. Uterine vein. It's going to go down here. It's going to go down here. This is all going this way. Well, lo and behold, they've got PGF. They didn't put the PGF2 alpha. Anyway, the ovarian artery and the uterine artery are kind of like wrapped around the uterine vein. And lo and behold, prostaglandin F2 alpha diffuses across to the artery at this point. It's called a countercurrent exchange. Lo and behold then, the red is the artery, the prostaglandin is carried to the ovary without going out to the rest of the body. That's an important point. Okay? So then, when prostaglandin F2 alpha gets to the corpus luteum here, it causes its demise. Okay, and I think I've got a couple words here. Yeah. So prostaglandin F2 alpha is luteolytic. Okay, prostaglandin F2 alpha is luteolytic. Luteo refers to the corpus luteum, and lytic refers to the breakdown. Okay, and this happens in the non-gravid horse. It does not happen in dogs and cats. There is no transfer of prostaglandin F2 alpha this way and killing the CL, okay? But let me go back to the luteolytic term up here. It's kind of interesting that lytic, whenever you see it, means the breakdown of. And look at the neat word I found, or two words. Catalytic converter uses lytic. And basically the catalytic converter on your car breaks down chemicals that are more toxic and releases through the exhaust less toxic chemicals. I thought that was interesting. I didn't really connect those two until I was searching for words that had lytic at the end. Well, lo and behold, in my searching, I found a little history of the prostaglandins. And I thought it was interesting. It's a little sidebar here. But they've been known for maybe since 1930. Somebody showed that in human semen, there was some compound that caused activity of human uterine muscles. Well, lo and behold, in 1935, somebody did some extracting of human seminal fluid, and it caused contractions. And it ends up being PGF2 alpha has other actions as well. And anyway, I thought that was a little history, but the name of it, this substance was named prostaglandin because it was thought to come from the prostate. So isn't that neat? The prostate gland makes prostaglandin. Just a neat little fact. And finally, here's the illustrations I use, the citations for the illustrations. Thanks a lot. See you later.